Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Shruti, and I'm honored to be your host today. Before we proceed, I encourage the audience to submit your questions to the Google form that is attached to this live chat. I welcome all of you to today's webinar on the National Science Day that is celebrated in India annually on 28 February. For 2025, the theme is Empowering Indian Youth for Global Leadership in Science and Innovation for Viksit Bharat. This day commemorates the discovery of the Raman Effect on February 28, 1928. Sir Chandrasekhar Venkata Raman, or Sir C.V. Raman, was an Indian physicist best known for his work in the field of light scattering and discovering the Raman effect or Raman scattering. The Raman effect is basically a demonstration that light changes wavelength when passing through transparent materials. For his discovery in 1930, he received the Nobel Prize in Physics. Sir C.V. Raman was the first Asian and non-white person in the world to receive the Nobel Prize in any scientific discipline. After receiving the award, Sir C.V. Raman became the first Indian director of the Indian Institute of Science, IISc, and he founded the Indian Academy of Science. Additionally, he established the Raman Research Institute. Throughout his life, he was honored with several awards. In fact, in 1954, C.V. Raman was felicitated with the first Bharat Ratna, India's highest civilian award. Sir C.V. Raman has a vast history and legacy in science. In fact, his son, Venkata Raman Radhakrishnan, was a notable radio astronomer, and his nephew is none other than the Nobel Prize winner in physics, Subramaniam Chandrasekhar. In fact, Subramaniam Chandrasekhar is honored by NASA with the Chandra X-ray telescope. Sir Raman's legacy is not only restricted to his family. He has many notable students, one of whom was Vikram Sarabhai, the father of India's space program. With regards to the National Science Day, India has been celebrating this very prestigious day since 1986. The main objective is to allow everyone to understand the importance that science plays in our daily life while popularizing science and technology. This day is celebrated to discuss all the issues and implements that happens with new technologies, as well as the development in the field of science, while giving the scientific-minded citizens in India a space. National Science Day is celebrated all over India in schools, colleges, universities, and other academic, scientific, technical, medical, and research institutes. In fact, if you would like to know what items in our life has been affected by science, here is a very, very short list. Water filtration and conservation. Advanced technologies nowadays are used to remove the impurities and pathogens from water while making it safe for consumption, as well as ensuring that we still have water for the future. Meanwhile, with recycling and waste management, it helps to reduce the amount of waste that we send to landfills and conserve our valuable resources. Also, waste management enables the conversion of waste materials into renewable energy sources. Speaking of which, renewable energy is playing a crucial role in our life nowadays. It is reducing our carbon footprint while preserving the environment. So these are a very few ways that our science has impacted our life and made it much better. Now, I would like to introduce everyone to our esteemed guests and speakers in today's webinar. All of them are inspiring leaders, and they'll share their journey, insights, and thoughts with us. Today, among our panel, we have Ms. Shaguna Gahilote, a program analyst with UN Women India.
I lost your voice.
Yes, sir. Women's Economic Empowerment, UN Women ICO. Ms. Shaguna currently leads projects related to climate, agriculture, crafts, and STEM. Her experience spans from gender, education, climate, livelihood, peace, to culture. Ms. Shaguna's engagements have seen her collaborate with organizations including the UNESCO, British Council, and many more. The current projects that she is leading are the GIZ-funded Carbon Offsetting in Rice Emission Core Project, Empowering Women in STEM, and Women Artisans of Change projects. She's an accomplished storyteller and is the co-author of Curious Tales series. She has co-founded and co-curated Gumkhad Narain, a traveling literature festival, and Katarkar, an international storytellers festival. Beyond her professional endeavors, she champions animal welfare and is the founder trustee of Animals Are People Too. She often contributes articles to several platforms. We also have Dr. Parveen Saini. He is currently the senior principal scientist at CISR National Physical Laboratory, New Delhi, India. Dr. Parveen completed his PhD in conducting polymer composites from the Center for Polymer Science and Engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. His research interests include conducting polymers, carbon nanotubes, graphene, and their nanocomposites, and polymer technology. For the last few years, he is actively working in the area of waste management and waste-to-wealth practices, with a focus on the diverse waste streams, including biomass, plastics, laminates, composites, e-waste, batteries, solar panels. Dr. Parveen contributes towards several publications, books, and patents, and is involved in international scientific cooperation with SDU Denmark and RMIT and CISRO Australia. He's also involved in teaching and mentoring as a professor of engineering science in the Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research. He's a life member of Materials Research Society of India, Polymer Processing Society India, and many other professional bodies. Finally, last but not least, we have Dr. Santosh Vadavale, a senior professor at a physical research laboratory. He earned his PhD from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, where he focused on galactic black hole and binaries, as well as experimental studies with cadmium zinc telluride detectors. Doing his postdoctoral research abroad and gaining valuable experience, upon his return to India, he set about for building a world-class laboratory for X-ray instruments for the Physical Research Laboratory. Dr. Santosh has very close relationships with the Chandrayaan mission, and I'm sure our guests, our attendees will find this extremely exciting. He was a vital member for the high-energy X-ray spectrometer experiment on the Chandrayaan-1, the principal investigator for the X-ray solar monitor experiment on Chandrayaan-2 orbiter, and the principal investigator for the alpha particle X-ray spectrometer provided on board of Chandrayaan-3's rover. The alpha particle X-ray spectrometer gave us the first measurements of the lunar regolith in the South Pole and gave us evidence that the presence of the materials from the lunar interior. This unprecedented measurements resulted in a rare publication in Nature, having all Indian authors. Dr. Santosh is also the co-primary principal investigator of the Aditya solar wind and particle experiments on board the Aditya L1 mission. Currently, he's involved in a number of upcoming scientific missions, including the Venus Orbiter mission and the Mars Lander mission, as well as several future X-ray astronomy missions in various capacities. Thank you all for your presence today. First, before I open the floors to each individual panelist, I do have one or two questions which I would like to hear your brief thoughts on. The first question is, what inspired your journey in science, and how can we motivate students to explore STEM fields? Ms. Shaguna, see you're bursting to answer this.
Right. No, thank you for this question. And though I work with the United Nations, I work with UN Women at the moment, I've worked with UNESCO, not necessarily with the science department, but with the culture department. My journey with the science has been one of that kept coming back and went away. So I think till class 5. So I'm really going to take you back into the memory lane, how it's all started. So going back to school, till class 5, one was a very good student, and I've specifically, talk about mathematics because that's what I majored in, and I've got a double master's actually in mathematics. And till class 5, I was doing very well in math. My mother used to teach me mathematics, and at school, you were doing well. And not to kind of blame game on this, but I've also been a teacher very briefly. The teachers really influenced you students, and especially when you're talking about school education. A teacher, whether you like a subject or you don't like a subject, how well you will do in a subject, a lot of it, goes down to the teacher in the school. And in from class 5 to class 6, when you go from the junior school to the middle school, mathematics and science really changes. Then from middle school to when you go into the secondary school, and then to senior secondary, those levels really change. So what you think you like in the subject might, you'll be in for a surprise when you come into the next subjects. So, till class 5, one was doing well in mathematics. From class 6 to 8, it was fairly decent. And class 9, it really dipped for me for mathematics. And nobody in my family really had a science background. They were all into arts. So, of course, nobody would mind if I didn't take up science or anything like that. But I found a teacher, so my parents found me a teacher who was a neighbor, who was an engineer, and they thought that, well, she can't flunk in mathematics, can she? I mean, even if she doesn't want to do science later on, but at least, no, kind of flunking in mathematics. So I got this teacher, and he became a real support for me. I not only started to enjoy mathematics, I started to excel in it, so much so that in school, the teachers found out very strange that how come from not being a very good student and not very active in science, how come she's now participating so well. And then when it came down to taking the streams in class 11th, whether it was commerce or science or arts, I actually took mathematics with science. And later on, of course, when I did my graduation, I switched to arts with mathematics and went on with it. But that's what the importance of mathematics of a teacher can be in your life. And your teacher could be somebody, a help you find at home, or it could be help you find as a support system outside of school, outside of your home, or within the school system. And for me, later on, I did realize that for some of these subjects, it's very important that your basics have to be very clear. And that's where I think mathematics, one of the sciences where your basics have to be clear right from the beginning. If you miss those steps, it's very difficult to catch up. And I devoted myself a few years of my life teaching mathematics because I wanted to give back to the children, and support them how they could also do better from my experiences. And that's where the difference really for me was that you have a good teacher who can help you through, will make a difference. And that's why now when I went into studying, doing my double masters, then later on I decided to, really work with in the development sector, trying to help in whichever way I can, contribute to society. There's always been an angle of science that I was looking out for. And in my current position at UN Women, there's a program that we are running, which is empowering women in STEM. Because when we really look at the whole spectrum, of course, India stands way ahead of most of the countries in the world, whether you look at Europe or you look at the US, the developed nations. In India, I mean, a lot more students study sciences, a lot more women study sciences. But if you do like a percentage of it, the number of students from school to college really drops when you talk about women. From college going into jobs in STEM, that really drops. And if you really look at the leadership in STEM, jobs or in STEM companies, you'll hardly find any women there. So the project really focuses on making sure that you have more women in STEM, not just studying more STEM, taking more jobs in STEM, and then continuing it as a career path till the very end. So yeah, I mean that's been my journey in science, from being a student struggling with my sciences, and then trying to be a teacher to help other students, and then now if I can kind of contribute in a larger space of it.
Dr. Parveen? So you're mute.
So, like she has talked about it, my case was a bit different. I was a person who was always curious. So, what happens? I used to be very naughty kid, and I was not very good at the studies. So, I got grown up always being beaten up. So, we used to observe those things also. How to protect ourselves, how to move the body, how, I mean, I started understanding momentums and other things from that time onwards. And we used to live in a government colony, and there were the quarters. So we used to, I mean, stay always, I mean, sleep at the terrace, and we used to watch the sky, I mean, full of stars on those days. So that was an amazing experience. I used to watch the constellations and other things, and why and when started to happen. And luckily we used to saw the gliders also going. So how they are moving. Then there used to be a hot air balloon show. I mean, we used to live near the Safdarjung airport in Delhi. So it happens. I mean, we used to see so many kinds of activities, and they always spark some kind of questions and excitement. What exactly is happening? Yes, I was aware of my, I mean, inability to understand the science. It was just kind of situation which happens in certain kind of movies. I could not able to play with the numbers and other things. But yes, curiosity is always there. I used to make my tools. I used to read the books a lot. We have the library nearby. I mean, we were just mad about reading whatsoever. So those things create the logic. So even though my teachers always, I mean, say that he has to focus on certain things, they always say that his observations are very good, and if he focus on something, probably he's not understanding, so he need the more time. So my parents were also worried at those times, but yes, they tried their level best, and most important thing is that they never suppresses me, that they never put too much pressure over me. They said it is your life. If you grow up something, so at least you will be become more independent, you will be able to do better in life. So I used to see their struggles also. I mean, they were, I mean, you can say that the clerical workers only, they used to earn good enough both as a family, but they have the so much of responsibility. So I used to see those things. As I grown up, I started realizing. And then one day it has happened somehow that I started finding a good teacher also. So what happened, I mean, whenever I ask something why it happened, so he started, or he or she started devoting time, and then that's where the spark happens. And I started understanding the things, and my performance improved. Then I started finding that most of the people who are working in particular area, they are more in a certain kind of hurry or rush. So they just grab the things and release the things and got away with the marks. So I was okay. I am average person, but I was internally feeling happiness of that I know about the things, and that carried forward. And finally, I could able to, with the grace of the God, also I could ultimately landed up in institute like Delhi College of Engineering. There I find a very good, I mean, faculty, very good. I can say that my colleagues were so brilliant that I again have the two options, either to go down or just compete with them and survive. So I learned a lot from there also. So that way my journey goes on, and ultimately I can say that my all journey has associated and elements throughout here and there, whether it's related to the space. For example, the 1995 there was a total solar eclipse in Delhi and India itself. Sir must have remembered that thing. So that was the game changing thing for me. What has happened? Suddenly the sky turned and the birds started moving in the other direction. So there were recurrent, I mean, kind of things. And because I used to remember the things rather than cramming, so they started building up. And ultimately, even in the college, I started doing music, astronomy, and other kinds of things. Those kind of things that give me you can say that connectivity to the nature also, that gives me a space so that I can relax myself. I feel the positivity, because every day is not always a success. You have a lot of failures. If somebody asks me what exactly are your achievement, I always say that I am able to manage those kinds of failures and could able to do something. So I build up upon failures only. So that is all from my side. And definitely there were good teachers who played the part. And as a teacher now, I mean, I am a mentor also, teaching my students. So I just telling them that you need to learn about the things from your heart, and you need to understand that whatsoever you are doing, you should be passionate about it. You should understand it should be your first passion. And then failures are bound to happen there also, and in any other field also. If you like any other field, switch, have the courage. But in that particular case, you would remember Every person has to face so many kinds of adversity and failures. So you need to have the perseverance and kind of self belief so that you can do it. So that is what my story is all about. And I still believe that I am learning and trying to translate whatsoever I learn to my students also, and make them more confident, more responsible, so that ethics and integrity should also come into there. They should not be influenced by what exactly is happening around, and they should be connected to the nature. So that's what my way of doing the things, and that's what I am learning. Thank you.
Okay. And Dr. Santosh?
Yeah, so thank you for asking this question. I mean, again, so my story is a probability which is slightly different than again both other panelists, and somehow it so happened that science came very naturally to me, and a large part of it I would ascribe to my father. My father was a science teacher in initially high school, and then he became a teacher, science teacher in a B.Ed college. And at the same time, he was a very great science popularizer. He was very deeply involved into science popularization activity, and he involved with various that time different schemes from government. We were in Gujarat state, so there were different activities, there were different activities. And as a young school child, I always used to kind of accompany him in various activities. Uh, in some cases, for example, he used to take me. I very clearly remember he was selected for one a telescope making workshop where he was supposed to take two students from the state to Bangalore. He actually decided instead of students, he will take teachers because that becomes slightly more long-lasting. So he selected some other teachers from surrounding rural area. But then at our own cost, he also took the special permission and took me to the telescopic workshop. And I was just in 10th standard at that point of time. And but so that was kind of a time and exposure which we get. It is financial astronomy. I was already interested, of course, anywhere in some rural area of Gujarat at that point of time. Probably you might have heard there's a place called Vedchi. It's close to Bardoli. Bardoli is the place that famous for our Sardar Patel, Bardoli Satyagraha. And just close to that, so this was a kind of a Gandhian institute. And it's a remote place, so it was a very nice place to sit there and see the remote night sky. As usual, you are always fascinated by the night sky. And then there were various activities like as Dr. Praveen mentioned, this eclipse was one very important part. But before that, in 1986, there was Helix Comet. And then, so again, he was interested, he was kind of showing all the comet activities to various schools in the village. And I was, at the time, I was very young, but I was closely involved in all those things. Then as it comes, this 1995 solar eclipse was actually a very important point. At that time, I was more in a college. And then I still remember I have written up various articles, and I still have those notes and kind of lectures which are written in Gujarati, which are distributed to various school children across our district. And then they were very useful for all of them to witness this particular. I mean, it's a very concrete story, long story. Almost all our family members are aware that how we went ahead and we went to a place in called Alwar in Jaipur, Rajasthan district, where there was a totality. It was passing through that, and then we had a lot of challenging things at that time. We carried some of our family members, and we had gone and witnessed. So these things were there from very beginning to, and I was kind of thinking of yes, I somehow I will be associated with science, particularly astronomy. But at that time, I was doing my master's in physics. I was in NS University, Baroda. My specialization is there. It was there was a special subject called nuclear physics. So, but still, I mean, after that, when I went to PIFR, I mean, so it was not very natural path because most of the time after doing MSc, MS University Baroda is a very good university in the state of Gujarat. But still, continuing for PhD, mostly people need to say this is university and all. PIFR was kind of a very distant institute. You know, it's a very high level premier institute and it's very difficult to even get in that. Then because I had this kind of tendency to again not simply of cram for subjects or exams, but rather try to go deep into understanding it. So more number of times while doing that, it was not very clear that yes, that is what is helping, but then it actually helps in terms of when you are actually appearing for this different exam And I again give examples for these things. Nowadays, we have very sharp, high competitive exams, and then you have to solve some 100 questions in half hour, 1 hour, and all. Our TFR exams, we had some only 30 MCQ questions, and we had a 4 hours. But all of that, I mean, so each of them would actually test your very deep understanding of how what you have understood concept. It turned out, yes, that I did fairly good in that, and then there were some 2 rounds of interview, and then I could get in. So that was, I would say, a turning moment. Even then, it was like a TFR. There are large number of subjects pursued. It's not only astronomy. And when I went in, I kind of had this notion that, well, even though I have been working with astronomy for a long time, but I don't want to pre-decide this that I will work in astronomy. I will actually try out various other fields, various other subjects like chemistry, English, physics, physics, and all. So we had a lot of these options. This was first year. Finally, somehow I was actually just getting down for astronomy, and then I joined the astronomy department of the IFR. That again, I would say it's a kind of a little bit I was lucky on my side, because I was also interested in various experimental aspects. I was also doing a lot of electronic stuff as a amateur student in my college friends and all. And then here, the IFR astronomy group, particularly the group where I was involved, is actually the pioneer group of X-ray astronomy in India. And when you talk about X-ray astronomy, X-rays, that is astronomy, which is typically what we do is when we see visible light coming from various stars, other objects like galaxies, clusters. X-ray astronomy is done when you get X-rays coming from this object. And of course, we will not get X-rays on Earth. So we have to go in space. So by definition, when you are doing X-ray astronomy, you have to actually develop all these instruments that you wrote on, and then these are not available. You have to develop on your own. And then the TFR group was the first group to start this activity in India, and they were the ones who were actually doing excellent work at that time. And then so in that way, I was kind of very fortunate and lucky to get there. And so once that started, after that I had a chance of working in Harvard University, which is the Center for Astrophysics, which is again the world-renowned center. And then of course from there I came back to PRL. At that time, this Chandrayaan 1 was just coming up, and I had a discussion with the principal scientist of Chandrayaan 1 before I actually joined PRL, and then they had looking for somebody like this. And then so that's how it all started. So Chandrayaan series of programs are actually slightly different. It's more like a planetary science, which is again slightly different topic, but still it does give people you an opportunity to work on this different ideas of space sciences, but at the same time the core astronomy related activities, which is what I continue the association with another mission called AstroSat. As you probably might be aware, it's a dedicated Indian mission, which is entirely dedicated for conducting astronomy from space. Of course, it was launched in 2015 and it will be used for the last 10 years, and I was again very closely involved with that. And so both these things are thinking in parallel. I would say I consider it very fortunate that, I mean, whatever I wanted to actually do, I have been able to do. And I do tell a lot of people that it is like, I don't really feel this is a work. I feel it's just, I'm pursuing my hobby as a part of my work, which is a very rare, I mean. And then for a lot of people, I also say that, okay, when you try to do it, that either you make your hobby as your work, or you make your work as a hobby, and then that is what will lead you to true enjoyment in your life. You should not take your work as your work. And I still do try to live in that moment. In fact, for the last few times, maybe probably Praveen might also realize that we have been seeing this as you grow a little higher up, you have a lot of other bureaucratic activities and a lot of stuff to be done. That I actually now start feeling as a work, because that is something which does not give you joy. Within that, when you actually do some real science activity, like when you read some good paper, or when you read some good design, or when you read some good experiment, some good calculation, I mean, that joy you get, that is what it gives you a kind of kick. And I still try to enjoy it as much as possible. And I hope, I mean, that's a continuing, I mean, I don't think one can get tired by any time there. And I really feel fortunate that I am having a couple of opportunities to experience that over my career so far, and also in future there are a lot of opportunities which are coming up, and then I just try to convey these to various students, and then hopefully maybe get inspired by this and try to take this activity. So I think, yeah, that's what I might say.
Okay. Thank you very much for your words. So, everyone, is this actually indeed something we have to all we can reflect on? Now, without further ado, I invite Ms. Shaguna to share her insights and her experience working in the UN and her career.
Thank you very much, Shruti. It was lovely to actually hear from the other panel members as well, their journey, and it can be similar and still so different. So, my journey has been with, starting out with mathematics and hoping to probably be, on the other side of it as well, researching and doing work, something that could make a difference in different ways. But my calling, I believe, had been more to work with the society, with the communities. And after doing my second master's, which was in Bristol, which was applied mathematics, I had this very strong urge to really come back to India and work with the communities here. And the first project that I took was not with the UN, but with one of the national trusts in India, which works in culture and heritage. And I think the very first project that I did was in Odisha, earlier called Orissa. And there's a very small village called Raghurajpur. I mean, somebody who's from Orissa would probably know about them. And that's a small village that contributes hugely to culture and the heritage of the state. So, the dance form comes from there. There are Pattachitra that kind of comes from there. So very rich, small village. And that, I think was the very start of my journey after teaching mathematics. That was really the first job that I did. And giving back to the community and, being able to help them through that kind of is something that one tasted the first time and kind of stayed on with it. And different organizations that I worked with, a number of them were international organizations. So you had UNESCO that I worked with, UN Women that I'm currently involved with. And the role of the United Nations can be very different in different countries. I mean, of course, there are very many different agencies that work as well in different spheres. So if you have a UNICEF that primarily works with children, you have a UNDP that's working more on the development programs, and then you have the UNHCR, or you might have an SCAP, which is more into knowledge products. UNESCO and UN Women, two organizations or agencies that I have worked with, they've had a very different mandate. UNESCO came from the need to really develop the educational, scientific, and cultural side of the countries, and they contributed hugely to India as well, whether it was helping out with community radios or really with setting up institutions in India. UN Women, on the contrary, is a fairly new organization or a new agency of the UN, and probably the youngest one. It came about in 2009, 2010, and it came from a general demand from the civil society, because you had several of these agencies that were very specialized. So as UNICEF and the UNDP came, they were to more raise funds for the other UN agencies like UNESCO and UNESCAP to work. And then they were doing projects themselves. And gender became one of the aspects of all these UN agencies. And more, the countries found that there is a requirement really to have gender as the main focus area of some agency. So UNIFEM, which was more like a fund for women, and then with all the demands of all these civil society organizations, a lot of these feminist movement across the world, they said we need a UN agency that specifically works on the issues of women or gender, as they say. And UN Women came into being. I mean, UN Women India, there was already an office there, so it kind of translated into UN Women. And essentially, UN Women was supposed to look at all gender angles across all the UN agencies through this one agency. Of course, that has not still happened. I mean, we are still the primary agency, but that doesn't stop any other agency to work in gender. So the focus of UN Women has been in three areas, really. It's been the what do you say, the violence against women or against gender, different kind of genders that we talk about. And there has been, of course, the peace and security that we work across, and the third one that I come from, which is the women's economic empowerment. So really looking at how you can empower women through livelihood, through opportunities that you give through education, or through trainings and skilling. And that's where one of this program that I was talking to you about, was the STEM program, and which we see across the globe. It's not just an India specific one. Across the globe, you see very few women studying STEM. I mean, of course, in the primary section, it's compulsory. So you'll have all children going into school studying mathematics and science. I mean, later on, science, math, of course, comes very early. But as you see them growing, you see that this number of women really, or the girls really go down. And it comes from various beliefs. And this is not just very Indian belief. Mostly it will be seen that girls are discouraged, to take up science, or it's always, not always, but a lot of times it is seen that even in schools they'll be like, oh, girls can't do math, or girls don't understand science, why don't you do art? So uh, if you fail in science, or you fail in maths, for a woman or for a girl, uh, that's okay. It's considered all right, because you're not supposed to understand math and science. And that's across the globe. It's not something very India specific. Like I said, that it's not just to the Indian girls. You'll say that, even if you're in Europe, you'll be seen as, yeah, okay, that's fine, girls don't understand math and science. So it's really starts from there, where you are encouraged to take up a subject or not take up a subject. Will you be given a second chance to understand it, or you'll be like, okay, it's not for them, so you don't have to invest in them and explain it better. And when you have this kind of space that you are in, how much will you be encouraged to take it up? And a lot of times you'll see in some of these classes, you'll have only a few girls in that whole batch that you have, in engineering batches, and there's certain kind of subject, where you'll have only probably one girl or two girls, or maybe no girls at all. Yeah, and you have only men. So, what you also have to see is that you make spaces, educational spaces, also more conducive for women. Because if you have men teaching and you have men studying, except for that one or two girls, what is the body language that goes on there? How is it more comforting or more welcoming for girls to be there? Are they always proving a point that, I'm the only girl who made it to this course? So you have to be talking to, not just making, the space for that one admission in class, but how you will make that space, more safe for women to be. So that's what we talk about when we talk about women in STEM. We're not just talking about getting more numbers. We also talking about how do you make the space more women friendly. It's not just about men studying math or men teaching math. So you do a lot of these trainings, or a lot of sessions with conversing with men and boys. So you and women has this whole space where it's not just about talking to women. Women talking to women, it's a lot of talking to men and boys, how the gender spaces can be. Then taking it forward, encourage them to taking up jobs in STEM, because a lot of times you see that in the job space, again, there are hardly any women that you see. And that's a new project that actually we're taking up with UNESCO together, is more on the communication side. Do you really see the women in science, in the jobs? If we talk about an electrician, I mean, that's also science, right? But how many women electricians do you see around? How many women are comfortable going into homes and probably being an electrician? Are you creating that safe spaces in the workspace? Yeah, if you're doing. So you could have an ITI where they're teaching courses, which it could be plumbing, could be electrician. How many girls are taking that courses? How many girls who are taking up those courses? How many of them are really going to be taking up jobs? They will just go into shops and, probably selling clothes there. So, looking at the whole sphere of it, not just your schools, your ITIs, your colleges, how are the gender spaces there? What is the conversation that's happening? And then ultimately, when they take up jobs in science, what can we do? What's the mentoring level that they require to stay in that space? So you could be working with the best of institutions in the science space, but we do get these, newspaper clippings where you hear and where you read that so many women just, quit their jobs after a time, and they cannot cope with it. So, how can we make these spaces, these offices more conducive for them, whether it is talking about really not just their promotions or the number of hours they have to be putting in, but also, acknowledging the kind of care work that women have to put in. I mean, I think there was an article today itself that somebody forwarded, and they said that women put in at least 7 hours of care work or doing household chores as against men. So 7 hours you're putting in after coming back from work. So, are you acknowledging the kind of care work that women have to do, whether it's looking after the family, which could be, children in the family, or elderly care, which a lot of times is not acknowledged because in the West, it's not a concept of elderly care. It's a very Asian, African concept where it's not just child care, it's also the elderly care. So, are we acknowledging for them? Are we making space for them to be able to balance that out? Because if you want more women to stay in those jobs, irrespective, it could be arts or science, but what are those kind of spaces that you are creating for them to have a flexibility? So ensuring definitely in the science space where there are already fewer women, but you need that perspective to be there. How are you encouraging them to be there? And of course, then climbing up the ladder and seeing, more women in the leadership roles. So yeah, it's, I think, very, very important to have the 50% representation in science as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Saguna, for your words. It's actually very interesting to hear, and I'm sure the audience members will be reflecting on what you said. Dr. Parveen, building up on what you have said previously, you have mentioned that you are now teaching the future, basically, you're teaching them science almost daily. So what is your insights when you're doing this almost every day?
See, whenever, as you understand, whenever I try to teach them, so I understand that what are the problems I have faced as a student, what are the new things that are coming. It is not like a simple classroom teaching. We all know that our way of teaching the students in schools and colleges, still bit old style, where we talk about simple certain principles and other things. So definitely with new education policies and now the different faculties coming into the college, they are taking care of the research part also. So I try to involve all the kind of experience that I am gaining from my research, what exactly the advancements are happening, at the same time not losing the course of the path. So I will try to make the things easier. I will try to make them understand, because I have many times I have seen that there might be certain students who are good, but they may not have certain good skills to them. For example, some are not good speakers. So I'll try to sometimes involve Hindi or English mix in my lessons also. Sometimes I identify somebody has difficulty in understanding certain things. So I change myself so that everybody comes to I'll add the element of humor also. I'll try to narrate them various stories also. I'll try to tell them that you are much brighter than me. If I can become something, why can't you people? So only thing is, it's a matter of understanding the things. Once you start understanding the things, you start making it in a proper way, so that things started talking to you itself. So that's way I try to involve students in my daily life. And definitely, as I talked about, I always keep them motivated by saying that everybody knows that the India's only Nobel Prize came through Sir C.V. Raman. And it's a fortunate situation for the people, especially those come to the NPL, is that NPL is the place where the Sir C.V. Raman's co-discoverer, that is Professor K.S. Krishnan, was the first founder director of CSR National Physical Laboratory. So this is a laboratory of the great people, and it has been said by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, then Pandit Sir Vallabhbhai Patel have inaugurated it, and many eminent scientists, Nobel laureates, they have somehow either linked with NPL or they delivered the lectures, and they have done very good work. I many times talks about, if you go to you talk about the democracy, the symbol of democracy is indelible ink, and that is a product of the NPL. So our material science people did wonder, quite some time back, and still it is being used. More than 30-40 years, and the company who is selling that thing, they are also making lot of money. So everything can be possible through the materials, your technologies and other things. And likewise, if you talk about the ISRO and any other organization, see, the time is very important thing. If I tell them about, okay, the time is this much accuracy and other things, they may not understand. But sometimes we talk about, you see there the 3 digit even after the second. So time is important but for them it is up to the nanoseconds that is important, because there is accurate calculation that have to be done. There is no refueling in the space, there is a no u-turn in the space, and there is a no margin of error. So salute to the organization like ISRO when they said that 6:04 p.m. IST the Chandrayaan will be landed. That thing has happened. So that kind of accuracy is required. So that way, I mean, used to tell them about various technologies, how NPL has contributed in the past, whether it is this, whether it's a synthetic diamonds, whether it's a case of other things, whenever, I mean, it comes out. And definitely, I always tell them that the most important thing in life is not to fall into rat race. You are important. So whenever you are doing something, try to realize you're important. Do not compare with the other who is having the 15, 16 or very good publication. Just appreciate them. Don't take it as a pressure. Because if you take that as a pressure, definitely under pressure, even the greatest people can, I mean, collapse. Whether you talk about the stalwarts like Sachin Tendulkar or anybody you talk about. So I think that way I keep them involved about the things. And I always tell them that I am definitely find my mantra in involvement with the nature and surroundings outside. So I need not to, I mean, go for certain kind of meditation session or something. Whenever I go outside, I find my dogs moving here and there, wagging their tails, or I will see the stars. Okay, now Jupiter is in this position, and around there are other stars like Aldebaran is there. Okay, Orion is visible. So they give I don't know what kind of energy those kinds of things gives you. Again, re-energizes yourself. So that way, I mean, keep on telling them, and I definitely, I mean, link it with by materials and science, that if we are able to do all those kinds of high-end science and technology, our scientists, so material plays an important role. Advanced material especially play the important role. Technologies plays the role, and through those things, there are many things that we have achieved, but still there are scope for research because lacuna is there. Many times we are simply assembling the things. So we need to make our things also. That's where the role of Atmanirbhar Bharat and Viksit Bharat and everything comes. So that way, that is my way of teaching them. So that is how the things goes from my side.
Okay. So you actually answered a part of my question, which I was coming up a little bit later. But first, I'd like to ask, again, talking about the young and the future, like how can young researchers contribute to the breakthroughs in renewable energy technologies that we are coming up with nowadays?
Exactly. See, the most important thing is that, first of all, they should realize what exactly is the important. They need to understand wherever there's any field, they need to do the proper background studies. They understand, they come out with what are the lacunas there. And once they identify those gaps, then they need to implement what their own thinking, their own flavor. Many times I have seen that the researcher goes about something because certain paper says something. Until and unless they have identified the lacuna, they have added their own thinking. Because many times it happens that we are chasing something which is actually not the kind of thing. The contradiction to it is the answer to the certain great discovery or something. So I always say, don't go by the blind faith. Identify something. And then once you have identified something, definitely you have a lot of areas to work. You see, you keep your eyes open, everywhere you will find the problem. Like I always say that we have the solar panels for the quite some time. I mean, it is not a new thing, but those are based on the old technologies, silicon-based technologies. But when you talk about space and any other sectors, definitely we have good amount of budgets, and budgets, etc., is not a restriction. But for the commercialization, you need to have the restriction of the budget. So take care of the affordable technologies. What are the efficiencies? The newer technology that are coming, what are their advantages, and how to improve the lifetime of those devices. So for example, you talk about the solar technologies, that is a mature technology, silicon crystalline based technology. But what happens to those panels which have reached their end of life? So there is a scope for doing a lot of research in the recycling and waste management, and then recovery of the materials. So recycling in generally in our country is done by the informal sector only. They burn the material simply though, burn everything and the metals are important, just recover out. So can we realize waste to wealth? So that's way, I mean, there is a lot of scope. Then there is a scope to design the efficient materials for the energy conversion. Then there are different technologies apart from the solar also. There are other technologies also. The wind is very much, I mean, there, but you still know that there is no affordable technology and that can be utilized to have at the home, like the solar panel is reaching to the every terrace, because we do not have that kind of windy conditions in the city. So many things are there. Even if you have the materials, how to deal with those materials in terms of their lifetime, so you can just improve upon those things. Once you improve the life, you need to see that how they can be integrated to form the different kinds of devices, because the future devices is thin film devices. So they are ultra thin, I mean few nanometers thick devices. So you need to manage every layer, each and every their composition. So there is a lot of scope, and those things are not actually being commercialized. The only example of the commercialized devices is the in terms of the display devices, that is the organic light emitting display devices that comes into your mobile phones also. OLEDs, organic light emitting diode based devices. So that is again a contribution from the conjugated polymer science that belongs to the category of advanced materials. So I keep on telling them there is always scope for improvement. So when even if you design something, there is no saturation in any field. Even the people who are working in the area of a silicon, they know that silicon can be combined with some other material in the tandem fashion. But that means the other material is making an interface with it, and they can realize the better energy out of it. So there are always ways. I mean, design the material, change the architecture, improve the stability, reduce the cost, improve the efficiency, and maybe design the material that are more easy to recycle rather than difficult to recycle. So that is called the designing of the materials. And you need to take care of the complete life cycle at the starting stage itself. So that's what, I mean, I say that there is a lot of scope to do about the things. And one last point I wanted to tell, that when you talk about the renewable energy, the dust level in the country like India is very high. So that is going to have the large impact on the technologies that is being, I mean, taken from the abroad. So machineries are susceptible to wear and tear. Even solar panels, lot of dust is deposited. So first part, that means the incident radiation is cut off. So definitely the efficiency, not efficiency, the output power goes down. And if they that create the hotspots or something, the cell may also get damaged, and then efficiency may also goes down. So there is opportunity everywhere. That's what from my side.
So there's also an opportunity also to like tailor the
Exactly.
foreign technology to work in India.
Exactly. That is required. Until and unless we have our own technology, how can we deal with the challenges? Sometimes they tell us, okay, this is your purpose. It will be solved by these things. But when in between states comes, or when any malfunctioning happens, many times we are dependent upon this thing. Even there is a case of, I mean, I'm telling you a practical life. There is a case of the generator itself, and the cost to repair that generator is nothing. I mean, 75% cost is the cost of the engineer that is coming from the abroad. Generator, it's such a common instrument. So it sometimes those kinds of things happens. So indigenous technologies are very much important, and our people are very creative. You just tell them what to do. It has nothing to do with the education. Definitely education tell them how to understand the things, but our technologists are very strong.
You actually just parroted the word that I always hear my father says. He always says Indians are extremely creative. You will never
Yes.
find anyone more creative than Indians anywhere in the world. So hearing that just ignited a little bit of a memory for me.
Right.
So the final question that I would like to ask is, you actually answered the question which I wanted to ask, which is how does your work align with the vision of the theme for today? So instead of asking that, I would like to know there must be many students who are thinking of pursuing a career in material science and sustainable technology. So what advice would you give them? Like what type of what should they do before they pursue a career? What should they focus on?
I always give a simple advice in whatsoever area you are working. First of all, you should be first person who trusts that I have chosen the right area. And in case you realize somewhere that it is not working out, you should be the only person who should be confident that, okay, I'm switching it to working towards the other area. But the one thing is for sure, failures are bound to happen everywhere because through them only we learn. So that we need to have certain kind of stamina to take care of those kinds of failures, and definitely to learn from them why that has happened, instead of moving, okay, that thing has not worked. Otherwise it will become a story of the n number of beads, which in which everyone represents a kind of failure only, but you cannot build a garland out of it. So that is only possible once you, or necklace out of it rather, I say. So that is only possible once you start understanding the things. And as far as the Viksit Bharat or anything is considered, I always know that our youth is very much talented. Only thing is that we need to make them understand how to utilize those things, how to avoid the distraction. I'm not saying that you should not have the fun. Everybody should have the fun, but you should take whatsoever you are doing. You should utilize those funny elements to elevate your energy level towards that thing, rather than, I mean, wasting your time or wasting your energy or resources. It happens with us also. Like, I'm just telling you, many times it happens. When I started working on certain difficult thing, it prompted me. I mean, it is getting disturbed. Let us check one message on the Facebook. Let us try to find something. It happens to me also. Then I try to control. And after certain warm up period, I geared into the, I mean, entire thing. And then I started working out. So that is quite common, but you should not leave the main focus. That is the most important thing.
Okay, that is very thoughtful and very thought provoking at the same time. So thank you very much for your words. And now we shall gear towards Dr. Santosh, who has a very illustrious career and a very close one related to our Chandrayaan program. So, building on, like, speaking from your experience, what role does space science play in empowering Indian youth for global leadership and innovation?
Yeah. So thank you for this question. Okay. So in my opinion, when we are talking about, let's say, innovation or global leadership or in any success, any form, ultimately what is important is for everybody to have kind of a curiosity and temperament development. If we are, I mean, how you want to ask questions about anything rather than accepting whatever is being told. So that scientific temperament development is the key, in my opinion, to for any future success. And in some cases, yes, people may have, but this is something which can be developed for development of it. I mean, usually if you go to most of the schools, sometimes science and maths are considered as a boring subject. People are kind of getting away from it. They are not too much interested. And that is where the space actually comes in picture, because space is something which is accessible to everybody. Sky is accessible to everybody. And these phenomena, celestial phenomena, are something which invokes curiosity and interest from entire population, whether it's a small, young, old, particularly in kind of our society where there are a lot of things are linked with space. Even if you see all our traditions, everything which is kind of linked with the various celestial phenomena. In many cases, there are myths. In many cases, there are scientific basis of a lot of things. In many cases, there are no scientific basis. Like, for example, take example of solar eclipse. Now, for a long time, people have been having a lot of wrong notions about solar eclipse. But those are something which is the most beautiful element which you need to understand and experience. So when you try to discuss and explain this thing, this is something which invokes the basic curiosity from young students, and then that eventually gets them closer to science, which is what is most important right now. So instead of kind of telling the importance of learning science, just making them enjoy the science is what a space education would enable to do. So from that point of view, I'm just saying that introducing or making user experience at young age with this would help them significantly to enhance their interest and their curiosity and develop scientific temperament in them. So that is one very important aspect of it. Having said that, I would also like to add here that this is a kind of getting initiated in science, having a deep understanding of a basic concepts of science are still important, particularly if anybody wants to actually take this up as a career to excel in it. So nowadays, particularly in urban areas, there may be sometimes what I call overexposure. So there also there are little pitfalls what is kind of manage. But in general, it is very important to include the aspects of the basic curiosity-driven approach towards space exploration and space sciences. We can see in the younger generation, I think, it's going to be very, very helpful for their development of a future successful people. I would say, okay, I mean, leadership is one. Not only we can lead, it also requires certain other qualities from individuals. But in terms of being a successful career, yes, having a good scientific environment is always going to be helpful, and that is what eventually a space is going to help us. So, yeah.
Okay, that is very fascinating to hear. And building on that, what's the role that physical research laboratory plays in contributing to this, as well as India's leadership in this cutting-edge space research and technology?
So, okay, actually, I had a couple of slides with me on that, but I think we are getting this. I will not go into that, but I will just try to mention it orally about the physical research laboratory. So, as Praveen was mentioning, I mean, physical research laboratory is again a similar institution which has been a very key place to nurture the Indian science that we have so far. It was established by none other than Dr. Vikram Sarabhai in 1947, and one can kind of understand the visionary like Vikram Sarabhai and his vision. When he returned from Cambridge, he was just age of 28, and at that age he established this. Everything was, I mean, he was the sole person who was responsible for it, but establishing the institution. But still, when it comes to giving a leadership to the institution, he actually involved a very well established stalwart, P.R. Ramanathan, who was again the student of C.V. and he became the first director of Physical Research Laboratory. And so from there, it started. And under their leadership, Professor Ramanathan was actually an atmospheric scientist and what we call lower space sciences. And Sarabhai was always interested in doing the space sciences, rocket experiments, and then with that they started doing various rocket experiments. First rocket, I think probably all audience also might be aware. Recently, we had some popular series on that, which actually tries to depict some of the aspects pretty nicely. Of course, they have taken a lot of liberties on that, but many things shown beautifully. Where how what all things are involved when you want to actually do the experiments, which are highly challenging. For example, it seems very trivial for us to launch a rocket. Like almost everybody is we know how the fire Diwali rocket works. But when we are doing the scientific rocket, the scientific experiments, where we need to have control of each and every movement of a rocket, each and every microsecond, what is the state of the rocket is going to be, and what the direction of the rocket is going to be, and what all the kind of proposals we need to include there. And a lot of those things actually we need to develop on our own. Even if, like, for example, let's say initial first rocket experiments were actually done in collaboration with the France and US, but still many of those we actually need to develop in-house in order to do that successfully. And then since Vikram Sarabhai started that from early 1960s, it led to the formation of Indian space program and then ISRO as such. Okay, it was quite unfortunate that Vikram Sarabhai passed away in the very early stage of our Indian space program formation. But then after that, other stalwarts like Professor U.R. Rao, who was later on the chairman of ISRO, he was also a faculty in the PRL. He actually was doing the various X-ray astronomy experiments on rockets. But then later on, he became in charge of India satellite program. He made Aryabhatta. So the entire, I would say, the space activities of today which we are seeing is result of all those early efforts which were done in PRL. In a more recent time, when you see even the Chandrayaan, the basic conception of a Chandrayaan 1 in in late 1890s was done from Physical Research Laboratory, where we have planetary and analysis group. There were scholars like Dr. Goswami and Dr. Pandari who actually conceived the entire Chandrayaan one program. And then PRL was the principal science institution for Chandrayaan 1. And then slowly later on it led to Chandrayaan 2, when Chandrayaan 2, of course, Chandrayaan 3 is the repetition of Chandrayaan 2 only because we wanted to have a successful landing and lower operations. So all these experiments are actually, I mean, PRL has a very strong to PRL has played a very key role and is continuing. For example, now, right now, what we are working on is the next generation missions, like we are talking about a Venus, a mission to Venus, and a mission to Venus. All of them, there are very active involvement from PRL scientists, and then so this leadership is a kind of thinking.
Okay, so building on what you've said, and also like thinking about the fact that the kids are interested in going to space science, because since we are a space organization, most of our students are actually very interested in space science. So what advice would you give to any aspiring scientists who wish to contribute to space and innovation? Like also, like as I said before to Dr. Parveen, is like what sort of fields should they focus on? Is it okay? Because I remember once hearing a question from a student who was interested in biology. She pursued biology, but she also wanted to connect biology with astronomy. So what sort of ways they can do to somehow also make a career of their interests with astronomy, like mix two seemingly non-connected interests together.
So yeah, that's a very good point. So I would also like to add this one point here, that apart from all these scientific experiments and missions, and PRL's primary role is in nurturing the scientific talent of a country. We have a very strong academic program. And then, so in some sense, actually, I would say our work, this core work is done by our PhD students. We have almost more than 100 PhD students at any point of time. And then more than 50 to 60 postdoctoral students which are working in PRL. So those are the core of our scientific work. But apart from that, what PRL is also involved in is kind of attracting various other students at a slightly a lower stage, I mean, undergraduate stage or even a school stage. For example, the science stage. Tomorrow we have our own National Space Science, National Science Day celebration in PRL, where what we do is conduct kind of exams in all our remote schools of entire Gujarat state, and then part of those the various, because at some point of time you have to have some selection. We would like to have as many students as possible, but there are various policy reasons. So then from various schools, select some 2 or 3 students, they will bring them here in PRL and give them exposure to the opportunity. So that is the one something kind of enhances their curiosity, and that exposure actually leads quite far. We also have a special, our ex-director, Mr. Devendra Lal. He has instituted a fellowship, and that has actually now received a kind of a first state in Gujarat, where any student who are taking the basic sciences. So this is pure for pure sciences. I mean, I would like to make a distinction. It is not for, so any student who is taking engineering or medical, it's kind of not an expert, but anybody who is pursuing the basic sciences, this is actually paid to them for next 5 years. And the amount wise, okay, small, but that prestige it has achieved is a very good, and there are a lot of people who are actually aspiring to get that. So that kind of adds a lot of, I would say, not competition, but it's a interest, enthusiasm in taking up science for this as their career. In terms of the basic advice, I would again like to go back to my original point that when we are talking about activities in the PR or science in general, we are talking about the core science research activities. And there, I would say, apart from all other aspects which are interesting, so-called interesting aspects in science, it is also important to pay attention to all your basic, what you call so-called boring stuff, which we actually do with mathematics and physics and chemistry and biology, because that is the basis which we are actually going to build up on. So whatever you learn actually in school, on the same learning you are going to build up in your college and the same learning you are going to build up in your post-graduation, and then ultimately that is what is going to lead you of your basic understanding when you are doing taking up a research career. So having a sound foundation on those things is very important. The other thing that you mentioned, interdisciplinary nature, and that is something which is coming out so strongly in the phases now that it is like the immediate example is what you mentioned, biology and then astronomy. And today, the astrobiology has turned out to be a so key and critical area where we actually require people who have a good understanding of both astronomy, physics, mathematics, as well as biology, because astrobiology is a very emerging and very branch of an astronomy where anybody who wants to make any progress. So, for example, I would say in some sense it's a very low-hanging fruit for next few years. I would say any student who is interested in both these aspects of both this subject would have a relatively entry in the research domain because there are lots of activities going on. Similarly, our time, if I remember, when I was actually pursuing college, geology was kind of considered to be a very boring. I mean, only the person who have not got in any other place will take subject in geology. If you see today, as a part of planetary exploration, geology is the most important subject. We want to understand the formation, and we want to understand all the geography of various planets and all the morphology of various planets. So whatever we have understood for Earth, I mean, that is in that context we have to put it for other planetary observations and planetary studies. So it is absolutely important to have the students who have having this background in geology and at the same time interest in astronomy. So they are, I mean, even now I would say they are in very high demand. So these kind of interdisciplinary studies are, I would say, coming at the forefront of the current research areas, and there are equal opportunities for. So essentially, it all boils down to the what interest you have in which field, and if you have completely distributed field, but if you pursue sufficiently, you will be able to connect that. I mean, so we are talking about space science is another field, but this, in my opinion, I think it will good for any of the field, because most of the time we see that science nowadays is getting more and more interdisciplinary. So what would be the most important for anybody is to kind of keep pursuing it. Perseverance is the key. And probably, okay, a lot of times we hear it, but when we actually experience it more and more, we realize that a raw talent is one aspect. It is of course helpful. It will take you. But if you have talent but not perseverance, you will not be able to go far. It is actually perseverance which takes you far. So you should not give up by having a kind of a short-term low output or failure or whatever. I mean, if you are really interested in something, if you want to pursue something, you put the effort. Yes, eventually you will succeed. So that's what I would like to convey to you.
Okay. So you actually brought up interdisciplinary, which is one of the questions I wanted to ask earlier, because that is a very, not new topic, but it's something that's being spoken up quite a bit nowadays in science, interdisciplinary. So you actually covered it quite well. And now it is time for us to go to the questions that our attendees have been bursting to ask. And the first question, which I think it's best to start with this question, and Dr. Parveen, I would like for you to answer this, is because you are having you're dealing with school students also, is this is from Kartikeya Sharma from the Aditya Birlal Public School in Jaipur. And they want to know actually is why is it important to study science? So that's the first question. I thought we could start off with Q&A.
That's a very, I mean, good, I say, question. But you always know that whenever you enter into the science, you have the opportunity to understand the sub-phenomena that are associated with them and quantify those phenomena. So science gives you an ability to better, I mean, understand what exactly is the logic behind that thing, why it is happening, what are the parameters, and how it can be quantified. So that way the science is very, very important. Otherwise, for example, any person, I mean, when the science was not there, I just want to give an example. Earlier, it used to be thought that whenever there is a eclipse happens, So it is bad for us. We should not move out here and there. And nowadays the sciences tell that okay, some kind of changes have happened in the earth atmosphere, magnetic field and other things, but it is very interesting things, and now everybody is open to it. People start moving here and there. So it is science who provides us explanations also. Science provides us ability to measure the things also, and science provides us to make more stronger connection with the things. When you can say that okay, this is happening because of that, so it gives you a kind of a kind of excitement and feeling of betterness. That's what I say.
Okay. That's very fascinating. And now, Ms. Shaguna, this is, I think, in relation to the when you spoke about how your first job was, you went to a rural village in Odisha. And Mr. Varod Abhijit Anil would like to know how can you improve social life of rural areas by using science and technology?
Right, thanks for that important question. But I'll also just add to the previous question that, while we were working with UNESCO and we were working with NCRT, I think the one emphasis that we always make is that science makes a person more logical. And of course, Dr. Parveen has very clearly specified how it makes you logical. So, despite the fact that there's always been this thrust that, let children have an option of leaving sciences early, I think that on the contrary, they should pursue science as long as they can. That 10th standard is a good thing because it makes them more logical. And that's just good for them as human beings. That necessarily doesn't mean they have to pursue a career in science, but to know science, to have studied science is an aspect that's good for them, for their growth. Coming back to the question that I have been asked by Abhijit, there's so many ways that you can really, really make a difference to the rural communities, and I think we need the sciences more than ever now. Like Dr. Parveen was also saying that, we need our all these applications to be adapted to our needs. What is the need in India and how we can adapt to their needs. So whether it is the groundwater that is really, really depleting in rural areas, even if we talk about the craft sector, how chemical dyes are being used and they're being, without the water being treated, they're being, going into the ground level, going to the ponds and, killing all the fish, etc. So at every aspect, whether you talk about the solar energy, we need so much of scientific intervention in our rural communities. We need them to kind of look at the problems. I think the one thing that also these young researchers should also be allowed to do is to actually go to the rural areas, spend a bit of time there, understand what are the issues that they are facing, and then come back and adapt to, what technologies exist, what do not exist, and how they can really impact. So I think India can really contribute to the whole world, because you have the right kind of people with the right kind of knowledge. And also, like we always say, that they are the most creative. So, we need to have those creative minds to be directed to the rural areas and to the population that we have. Yeah.
Okay, that is, thank you for your thought. That is actually very insightful. And Dr. Santosh, uh, let me just get the person's name, Devan Shish from HLC International School in Chennai, would like to know what qualities define a great leader in a scientific community.
Okay, so again, this is a very interesting question, and yeah, so scientific leaders, of course, there are various ways in which a great leader are kind of defined, but as it comes to a science, the most important point here would be, in my opinion, to be the openness of a leader. You are always reading the group, but today, or maybe when you are open to listening ideas from your team, for younger people, for much smaller at a smaller position than you become automatically even a greater leader. And then, of course, so that is one point. The other thing is you take a responsibility, which is again, I think there is a very classic example which our Honorable President Abdul Kalam was giving is what is the great leader, where when there is any problem, you take responsibility. When there is a success, you success or credit where it matters, and when there is a input which are coming from a very junior people or very lower people. So basically, you have to keep your eyes open. We always tell that, but when you go up to that position, it it becomes actually difficult to practice it, but when you actually do that, then that is what will make you a great leader. So in my opinion, this is a very point for being a good great leader who will lead a science.
Okay, and building on this, the previous questions, and this question is actually open to all, is what are the key skills and qualities that the young Indians require to become a global leader in scientific research and innovation? So this question is open for all to answer.
Shaguna, maybe you can begin.
Dr. Praveen, why don't you take that?
Okay. See, ultimately, if we are talking about the skills, we always know that, okay, science, chemistry, physics, maths, and whatsoever area you are, I mean, reading, those skills are definitely required. But apart from that, those most important skills are how to, I mean, utilize that knowledge into a useful outcome. That is much more important. What happens many times, we are having all the skills, we understand something and then they move forward. So you should have a ability to build the things step by step and in a way so that ultimately you ended up building a castle with a which is ultimately providing certain kind of outcome to the society. And I always say that I don't know whether it is maybe called as a skill or something, but yes, whenever you are doing something, you should maintain your integrity. That means what exactly you are doing when nobody is watching. You should be thinking about the other people. You always take yourself as much blessed compared to others. I always consider myself much blessed compared to the much more talented people who may not be having the opportunity to have that kind of job I am having. So I realize that thing. So you should have that kind of realization. That is also a kind of skill. You should be conscious enough, and then you start building upon those kinds of skills. You should be aware of if you are a I mean a technology freak somewhere, you should know that it is not about reading. It is about how it can be correlated with your area. Where are the gaps? So those are I can always say that those are the skills that are exactly required. And definitely you should know how to manage the stress, failure, and other kinds of things. And you should not be, I mean, seeing or trying to live up the other person's dream. You should know what exactly you are here to do, and you try to do justice to that thing. So that's what I can say. I don't know whether these are skills or traits or something, but that is my answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Shaguna?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can only agree with the panelists here, what they've been saying. And right from the beginning, I mean, they've been adding to it. It's something that we've spoken. But integrity is definitely something that is very, very important. And that's what Dr. Praveen said, that what you do when you're not being watched. And that we feel more and more is kind of missing in the generation, not to say our which part of the geography we are in. We're finding shortcuts to do things, not do it complete. And that's where I think we are also lacking. So if you're not being watched, like Dr. Praveen said, do you want to go and see for Facebook, what's happening on Facebook? If you are at a job, which could be anything, you are just watching your pet at home, or you just being told to watch guard a space. If there, I see that there's school students here as well. So if they've been just told to monitor a class, are you sticking to that? So that integrity is very important to your job, to yourself, more than anything else. And applicability, so we have nowadays like too much knowledge available. There's so much. You will say something, you'll say space, and if I don't know anything about space, I can just Google and find like abundance of information there. What are you doing with that information? How are you applying it? I think that's where we now need to go, because this is a generation with a lot of information, but what are you going to do with it? So that question that Abhijit said, for the rural areas, think about it, and I think that's a very, very good question that he asked, that what can we do for the rural areas? But then we have a larger population in the urban pockets. How can we make their lives better? If you talk about Delhi, I live in a city like Delhi. We got a problem of pollution every 3 months, or at least once in a year for 3 months it comes up. how can we apply, what can we apply, what are the changes that we are ready to make in our own kind of space that we've created and our comfort zones. So yeah, I would go with integrity and applicability of the knowledge that's important.
Okay, and Dr. Santosh, what would you like to add on?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would completely agree with both the points, and particularly about integrity. I actually use the same phrase with my students that when you are not being asked or when you are not being seen, what are you doing is going to define what you are finally going to achieve. So that is completely, I mean, there is no doubt about that, no contest about that. But I would like to add a couple of more points into that. So what I would say is uh, there are two aspects of doing science. One is a very immediate, small problem which we need to solve immediately, maybe today, tomorrow, this week, next week, versus a larger picture of why we are doing it and how it connects to a larger thing. So ability to contain both these things is important. I mean, and this is something which probably does not come very naturally. One needs to kind of cultivate it a bit that when you are apparently solving some problem which might be completely opposite to the direction eventually you need to go. But then you need to keep in mind that even though right now I'm going in one direction, my eventual goal is at other place, and then I will need to find a way to go there. So see that larger picture at the same time, keeping track of whatever immediate problem. These I would call it as a, either skill or a habit or a kind of attitude that is important. And then the other point is like identifying a dots which could be connected in a completely dissimilar or not apparent outcome, because quite often we miss that. I mean, there are a lot of things which you encounter, and then if you can actually connect a proper dot, a good design would emerge. Whereas it is also very easy to miss those dots in surrounding noise. So finding out that and ability to connect those dots is again something which, in some sense, I would say would come from little experience, particularly for the initial students who are working in starting their research career. Maybe it takes 2 years or 2 3 years to get into this habit, but they will be consciously developing this habit is going to be helpful. So that is something which is, so these 2 points kind of I would like to add over what already the other.
Okay, thank you. That's actually very insightful also. So altogether, it's mostly the various reasons that for good, various skills and insights that we need for be a good leader in science. And now this is the last question that I wanted to ask. Actually, I was hoping to end on the previous question, but I think this is a very important question which many students may be feeling. And this comes from Ananya in Indirapuram Public School, and it's again open for all. And she asks is, how did you know that this is your true passion? Has most of the things, like most of the times we are staying at home, especially kids, they're staying at home studying a lot, and they may not actually know that they like something else. They may not know that they can be good at something else. They do not really know. So how can they be 100% sure that what they are working towards is their true passions? What if there's something much bigger out there for them? So I would like to hear your insights and thoughts about this question.
So, shall I begin? Shall I say something?
Sure, sir.
Yes. Sir, I personally believe that it may be my personal belief and it is my story also. I am not a very, I mean, I cannot consider myself as a very eminent person, but yes, I am giving you my example. So, thing is that when you want to do something, there are definitely a lot of activity you will be doing. So, definitely you will find that there are certain lot of activities that are giving you extra kind of peace. I mean, you can do it for an infinite time. I mean, without feeling any kind of hurdles, you are always having certain kind of feeling of soothing vibrations. You are having the certain kind of self-satisfaction. And it is not like that immediately you started identifying it. Nature and God, I always believe that destiny somewhere exists. So they start, I mean, telling you, you ultimately start getting attracted towards the kind of area, and it will take you towards that particular area that will be, I mean, more suitable towards you. because ultimately it is all about the energy. So I believe that once you started enjoying something and you feel that yes, it is giving me certain extra skill, that means through which I can even make out the world a much better place, through which I can maybe even, make out my livelihood, through which even I can serve the society and I can bring the change. I think, and you at the same time getting enjoyment out of it, I think that is your true passion, and probably that will be the somehow that or linked area will be the your final destiny or field, most probably. So that is what I think.
Okay. And Miss Shaguna, what's your view?
Yeah, if if you're going to a job, you're going to your school, and you wake up in the morning and you're happy to go there, that means you are on the right track. But there's something that you hesitant to do, whether it's going out with your friends or going out to a party or going to this job. That means that's not for you, and you need to find something else that you enjoy doing, that you feel at peace with. But since these are all kids, I'll say never hesitate to change your path. Just because you have taken a subject, you've taken up a field, you've taken up a job, that doesn't mean you cannot change your path at any point. And especially now more than ever, there's so many opportunities. You're not questioned as much. If you kind of change your path. I've changed my subjects, and I've changed my path completely and doing different things. I have a passion for storytelling. I look after animals. I have a whole aspect to that, which I don't earn from. But there's so much you can pursue in today's day and age. So at any point, if you feel that you're not enjoying it, never feel that you're trapped there, that I put in so many years of getting there. Other people didn't get this opportunity, I've got this opportunity, so now I can't escape. If you're not enjoying it, please feel free to experiment and find out what is your real calling, and follow that path. Yeah.
Okay. And Dr. Santosh, what would you like to add on?
Yeah. So again, both of them have covered almost everything to be said here. But I would again say that at early stage, particularly when we are talking about at the student level, what is passion, how to identify, I would suggest that you try to get as much exposure as possible of various activities. And so once you are exposed, once you have taken up some things, I think it will be relatively easy to identify which one you are truly enjoying more or which one you are not. And then that will help you to kind of identify your true passion. Uh, by default, a lot of things happen in schools and colleges. Uh, Mostly, what we have seen is that generally we are taking whatever are the default options, and basically our career ends up taking default option. A number of times people are not exploring other avenues which are available. So at early stage, education would be very helpful so that you can actually set it up as a part of, you take up that as your career. Um, if as Mr. Guna said, nowadays it is not very difficult to change the career at a later stage, but still I would say if you attempt to identify a proper place in early stage, you will have a better chance of succeeding towards the middle of your career. So try to get as much exposure as possible of all the different activities, including sports, including art, music, dance, culture, science, everything, and then see where it is. Also, enjoyment as well as skill. There are two aspects of it. Because number of times what happens is that somebody might actually enjoy some activity, but then there are some inherent or natural skills which are required to succeed in that particular field. So one also needs to keep that in mind, that whether you have those skills or not. Eventually, the success is there are two aspects of it: your skills as well as your passion. Usually, it happens that it both goes parallel. Sometimes it does happen that they are not in parallel. At the time, one has to see what would be a more advantageous. But essentially, it all boils down to a more and more exposure and more trying for various things. By before a time truly comes when you have to decide on your career.
Oh, okay. That is very fascinating, and I hope that this answers Ananya's and every student who has such a question in their mind or in their heart, that they should always try to experiment and try to learn, try something new, and it's okay, always possible to change at the last minute too. Now, unfortunately, our time together is coming to an end, and I would like to turn our attention to the future, present and future. And that question is like, how can India strengthen its global position in science and innovation through education and research? And also, what else can they do to strengthen their position? Dr. Praveen? Praveen, sorry.
Maybe this time Shaguna can start. She's more or less dealing with the wider gathering.
Shall we,
I
Shaguna?
thought Dr. Santosh would have been best
Okay.
placed
So,
to.
yeah, so I mean, for this particular point, I mean, I have one piece of advice which actually is slightly not immediately in a student-oriented mode, but I mean, so I have been seeing these, and it is like more and more it has been occurring to me that I mean, there are a lot of discussions of changing kind of the way we are teaching or curriculum, and there are how do we actually teach various complicated topics and subjects, and so there are a lot of discussions going on. Uh, I am not saying what we have is absolutely good or that there is no scope of improvement, but if whatever we have, if it is taught in a proper manner, it would have much better outcome. So, and that requires a more investment at a teacher education. And so I would say if you really have to make India great over the next 25 years, I think immediately next 25 years, what we need to do is to invest as much as possible on improving the quality of our teacher education who are actually going to teach 5 years down the line. And then if you have a point of all of us have said the teachers actually play a very good role in the life of a student. So if one get a good teacher, it would kind of affect the life of large number of students, and then they will be able to inspire. So right now, kind of in our society or in our culture, somehow it so happens that good teachers are not. I mean, there are many good teachers, but they are not getting as much respect as it actually the profession or the it actually deserves. So that is something which is important for as a society as a whole to focus on. And then, of course, in terms of various schemes or whatever government, etc., there are all different things. But if we put a more focus on how actually well to teach, then I think it will percolate down to which will affect to a large number of students. Focusing on a specific curriculum aspects are actually focusing on individual students, where if they are good students, you'll be able to catch them and nurture them. That is also important, and of course, is not denied there. But working more on teachers would actually help to improve the standards of a kind of an average student. So, and that eventually will improve a kind of a standard of a society, and then as the overall standard improves, I think it will certainly help to have kind of a say at a global scale. Yeah.
Okay, and Dr. Shaguna and Dr. Parveen, would you like to add on to what Dr. Santosh just said?
Shaguna?
Well, I would have, because it's going down to the students and, how India is placed to make a change. I think India is doing very well economically, how we're seen as a global economy doing very well for ourselves. I think for the students, my message would really be that, we are also becoming a very consumeristic society. And I think there is a time to step back. And, if you really want to save the planet, just because it's available and you can afford it, whatever it is, whether it's your social media kind of consumption or it's consumption of clothes or phones, we need to really step back and think of the planet. How much are we consuming, whether it's in terms of food, how much are we consuming? Are we just throwing it in the dustbin after that? So I think step back and think about the planet. And that's what I think India should really lead on and show the way.
Okay, and Dr. Parveen?
Yes, I just wanted to add, both of have already been covered all the aspects. I just wanted to, highlight one thing that Shaguna has talked about, the responsible. So responsible consumption is also one of the very important goal of the sustainable development goals. So students should go and read what exactly the sustainable development goals, what exactly is written, what are the sub actions that have been defined. So at least they start understanding about those things. And very important thing is that not only the responsible consumption, responsible disposal also. We go here and there and we do not know what to do. I am so sorry. Sometimes it hurts me. I mean, most affluent people, most educated people, even many times the school student, it's a blunt statement. They go here and there and they are the throwing waste out of it. They are very fond of the junk foods and they ultimately litter here and there. So we should please take responsibility at least for our own waste. Try to manage, try to segregate, do not spoil the environment. And I always say that while growing up, the connectivity with the nature is very important. So skill enhancement programs should be taken more seriously at the school level, not for the sake of having few certificates or demonstration. The student should practically participate in those kinds of things. Once you start dealing, I mean, whether it's a simple composting or doing anything, you understand that everybody is talking about, but all those things that circulate over the Facebook or here and there, sometimes some technologies are there which you otherwise blindly believe actually pollute more rather than resolve the problem. So you need to control yourself, you need to absorb the things, you need to develop certain kind of skill that may be your ultimate profession also, and that may be a kind of relaxing activity, and that may be a guiding path for you also. Many times when we are not doing anything, we always come back to the skill. So skill ensures that plan B is ready. So when I could not able to, I mean, it is a very true fact that at that time, once some US slowdown was going on at my time when I used to be in the college. So I was very good at the software side. I thought I will go into the software. I was not never good bad at my own subject. I could not able to even get opportunity to fill the forms and sit. So once you come to the open platform, you become a kind of person. I was thinking, what is wrong with me? I mean, I am the only one from such a reputed college and I am not able to find job, and I am going toward the interviews and there are so many people, and lathi charge is also happening at those places. So at that time, skill came to my rescue. I had the interest in music. I could able to relax myself. I could able to earn out something and I could able to contribute towards. So any skill I'm saying in general, and skills actually add the logic. Always, I mean, makes you more logical toward the things. So you started understanding and seeing the things that other people may not be seeing. Like I always, whenever I go, I know that I need to carry my own disposable with me, because disposable create equally, I mean, difficult kind of situation. It is not like that we have a certain kind of biodegradable waste. Those cups, you know that they are the biggest havoc these days. But only thing is that they have, I mean, change the material. So we always talk about that plastic is problem, plastic is toxic. So I always, I mean, tell people that okay, that is not the problem. Only thing is that we should consume our resources very wisely, and I must say in an economical manner, like we used to, I mean, spend our penny many times when we are hard earning it. So we should have certain kind of realization about how the things are happening, and then we should not try to pass on our blames, because sometimes that propagated and give the wrong impression. I many times meet many people, they say that, sir, the plastic is pollution, plastic is toxic, because animals are dying because of that. So we should, if we have the logic, we should know that what exactly is happening. We all have the knives at our home. If we use it as a tool and it goes to the criminal, it becomes the weapon. So we always know that it is not, the problem lies somewhere else. So we are trying to shift our blame and ultimately nothing happens. So responsible actions solve much bigger part of the problem, whether it's a waste management, whether it's a upgradation of technology, whether it's a you can say that crime, whether it's a corruption, everything can be resolved if we started taking individual responsibility while maintaining the integrity and other things. So that is the larger point from my side, and that's all.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your valuable insights and all of your presence and the words that you have shared today. And to the audience, I would like to say, before we sign off, I would like all of you all to remember that as we explore the universe, we're also exploring the limitless potential within ourselves. Let us continue to reach for the stars in our quest for knowledge and discovery. Thank you for attending, and good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you so much.
And it was very nice connecting with all the panelists. I mean, I learned a lot.